no, scratch my beard here.
Yeah.
That's just a sign. With that, let's go over. Gavin, can you take us out of this room and put us back into the regular room? Oh, is he not on?
You're good to go.
Okay. Good afternoon and welcome everybody. We're about to start our session in about a minute or so. We'll get going and start it up. Welcome everyone. I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces. How are you doing, Stephen?
Good.
All
nice
right.
to be here.
Welcome. Have a good afternoon. I see Donna. How are you, Donna? Indeed, I see you there. You're good?
Can you hear me?
I can. I can hear you. I can hear you.
Great. Good to see you.
I see you as well. I see 647. I see your number. I don't see your face, but welcome to you as well. There's a few others I see. I'm seeing your telephone numbers. Welcome. We're about to get started in about 30 seconds. Well, it's actually 15 seconds now. Okay. Well, good afternoon and hello to everyone. I'd like to welcome you all officially to Ask the Professional series being put on by the BBPA to support our community, particularly as we go through this quarantine together. My name is Anton James. I'm with Sandler Training on the side, and I'll be hosting today as we discuss managing your finances in today's climate. Our special guest today will be Michael Pinnock, a chartered professional accountant and consultant with a license to practice public accounting in Canada, USA, and throughout the Caribbean. Now, Michael is currently a sole practitioner and has distinguished himself as an astute accountant, providing assurance and consultancy services to organizations and businesses both locally and internationally. Michael has amassed extensive experience prior to migrating to Canada and spent 10 years with a regional government in the corporate and finance department. He's a firm believer in giving back, and Michael's provided pro bono work on financial statements financial audit statements to charities and not-for-profits. Michael has received many awards, including Outstanding Contribution and Services to our community from the City of Markham. Other boards and committee works include the Ontario Trillium Foundation, York Regional Children's Aid Society, York Regional Police, as well as treasurer for a number of charitable organizations. In 2018, Michael was awarded the designation of Fellow with the CPA Ontario. It's the highest award conferred on a member of the Institute for outstanding work, both in the Institute and in the wider community, and for his dedication to being an ambassador to the profession. Now, before we go into it, I just want to put a general disclaimer out there. As a reminder and a disclaimer, for professional and legal reasons, this form is designed to provide, not to provide specific advice on such matters, and you should therefore seek the advice of subject matter professionals on any specific matter. With that, good afternoon, Mr. Michael. How are you?
I am excellent.
Love to hear it.
Thanks for having me.
No problem.
As I listened to that little bio readout, I felt so good that at my age, I have a footprint.
Oh, you're still a spring chicken, sir. You're a spring chicken with many years to go. Tell us about yourself, sir. Tell us about yourself.
Okay, so in terms of my own profession, I've been in the business of accounting for the last 40 years.
Yes.
I started out back in Jamaica, and I worked with a lot of big companies, both government and the private sector, as a straight accountant, and then I switched over to do public accounting. And I just like to make a distinction here. A public accountant is one who can sign off on audit opinions. So you have a lot of accountants that can do the accounting stuff, the bookkeeping, et cetera, et cetera. But if you wanted an assurance opinion, then I'm the kind of guy that can do that stuff. And as you mentioned, I do have a license to practice in Canada as a CPA. I know a fellow. I also have a license to practice in the States as a CPA, but as a certified public accountant. That's what they call it there, right? In Canada, it's called Chartered Professional Accountant. Same CPA, but different words. And I have a license to practice in the Caribbean, but specifically in Jamaica as a chartered accountant, a CA.
All right.
I've done a lot of stuff like financial controlling for various companies. Did a lot of costing for like the bauxite industry. I was there for a while, and I've actually one of my primary training was as an industrial engineer. I really use that title or designation now, but my first, I'd say about 40% of my life was doing industrial engineering, so I'm very familiar with ergonomics and stuff like that.
Well, you clearly have amassed an extensive amount of experience, which is going to be a wealth that we can actually see if we can tap into some of it today. So let's talk about now the community. Where we see it actually going. What do you see as a dominant belief system regarding finances in our community?
So, from where I sit, what I see right now is there is a lack of or insufficient knowledge, core knowledge about what a business is. Okay. What are some of the elements and components that you need to have in place to have a business? And I'm going to use a word now, and it's normally a negative word, but it's the best word I can find. The difference between doing a hustle, just doing something from day to day, and actually running a core business. Because a core business have elements like a budget. And when we talk about a budget, it's a plan of action that is written, it's discussed, it's approved, and then it's a guide to do what you do, as against a seat of the pants feelings. Let's do this today, let's do that tomorrow. The concept of accounting in its purest sense. You have all these books and records, but have you placed them in a format that you can look at the balance sheet, the financial position? Can you look at the income statement, what is coming in, what is going out? Can you actually identify the individual cost drivers, those that are discretionary, those that are non-discretionary, those that vary with the output, and those that are fixed? Do you look at your cash flow to see whether getting a loan or using your own money is a better approach? Are you doing any sort of marketing to ensure that there's goods or services that you provide, there's a need or a want for it, or you just go out there and say, let's try something? Have you got your HR lineup so you can take opportunities of getting the best talent brought on board? Or are you just using your cousin to do this or your wife to do that sort of stuff? So what I see there now is that in the small and mid-size, especially in our community, there is a big gap between running a business and running a business that you hope to grow and strive and become one of those large conglomerates. And finally, what I'd like to say too is even the legal form that the business take. There are basically three forms. There is the sole practitioner, one man owner managed business, and then you may enlarge it to a partnership where you bring a couple of folks on board to bring more capital in the business. And then there is the one that the state provides for you, which is a corporation. And so a lot of times you find in our community, when folks file their tax return, for example, a lot of the business activity is filed through their T1, which is a personal tax return, as against separating the business from themselves and incorporate it and file it through a T2. And apart from the legal benefits of liability and so on and so forth, conceptually, it's a different type of entity and a different approach to the business model. So that is one of the challenges, a major challenge I see there.
Okay, that's a lot. That's a lot. So what are you seeing in the community? And if so, what are you seeing? And what do you see as the source and challenge of what you're seeing?
And I'm going to go back in answering that question, Anthony. I'm going to go a little history lesson, or just revise the history lesson here.
Sure, go ahead.
We are from a race of traders. We commercialized the Nile. We did trade with the Arabs. We went to Rome and gave them the great nice silk and satin and gold and what have you. But I'm not certain. Probably our transition through the Middle Passage, the transatlantic, coming to this side of the world, we are not business type no more. There are a handful of Black businesses. There are a lot of professionals and a lot of sole practitioners and so on. But we tend not to do a lot of business, and there's no lot of generational wealth. There's no legacy that we pass on to the next generation when we start what we do. We start something and there's no succession planning, for example. You start a business and it's going on, and then what's next? So that is one of the lack in the area I see as well.
Okay, so that's some of the lack. So just for clarity, because there's a lot there. Let's unpack it a bit. What would you describe as the business in our community like? So, for example, how, if someone has a business, are they small? Are they big? Or describe the characteristics of those businesses that you're seeing.
Well, most of the businesses, you do have big multinational Black-owned, well-run corporation.
Right.
But first of all, generally speaking, in any economy, the engine of that economy is small business. It's a natural feature. Contrary to what you may see where you have the big conglomerates, the bulk of the engine of the economy is the small and mid-sized businesses. Mm-hmm. So that there's nothing wrong with having a small and mid-sized business.
Agreed.
But in particular in our community, we tend to keep it exceptionally small or mid-sized as a matter of course, as if we designed the business not to grow, not to expand, not to go to the next level.
Okay.
That's a feature of what we do.
Well, I was saying, how is that different than other communities?
In other communities, I think there's a difference between rich and wealthy. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about wealth. A lot of the advertising knows about wealth. And what wealth means compared to rich is that you've put something, you've made an investment that will grow naturally through its own momentum over time. So if you want to be rich, you run a little business, and if you retire and you sell the business, and that is it. You want to be wealthy, you want to create something that will multiply itself over time and can be passed on to the next generation. And I think that is where we start. Very few businesses are passed on to the next generation. And even if it do, it's passed on in a different form. The son take it over and do something else, or it's not the same business. There's no continuity of the original business through the generations.
Okay. I want to hold on right here because we have a question for you. It's a question that came up from Malik. I want to buy a building from my financial statements does not reflect my qualifications for a mortgage, but I pay rent each month. What can I do as a small business owner differently?
And this again, the answer to that is part of an overall system of how we do what we do. So you want to buy a building, you want to own your own property, but you're a good rent payer. One of the challenges we have right now in doing stuff like that is your credit score does not in and of itself recognize, for example, good rent payment. And so when you go to the traditional banks, they'll tell you, I know you pay rent, you seem to do a good job, pay on time, pay the full amount, but it's not counting towards your credit score to make you qualify. Now, there are other institutions that you can go that may assist you in doing that. There's some, I think they call them some corps they have right now, non-traditional banks They're non-traditional financial institutions that are going into that specific space to assist small and mid-sized company finance their stuff. So that's one area you could look into. Long ago, many years ago, the Black community used to do stuff where they do self-financing. They would create their own economic base and they would do self-financing through that. I don't think we have a lot of those organizations around anymore. But this came from the concept. If you're from the Caribbean, you may hear the concept of a partnering, where people come together and you just put their money in a pool, and each period someone get that lump sum. They basically don't pay any interest on it, and they don't get any interest in it. And that is how, for example, right after, say, slavery in the Caribbean, a lot of the ex-slaves were able to finance their own stuff. So the big answer is, in our environment now, it's very difficult to transition because the bulk of the lending agencies don't work with that sort of stuff. But there are lending agencies now that is creating that space that you can go into. And so, I'd recommend you go sit with your folks and try to make have a discussion. And off here, you can link with me. Later, they'll give you my link, and I can give you some specific guidance as to how you may be able to do that.
Perfect. Got another question for you from Stephen here. What do you believe is the biggest barrier to members of the Black community to start a small business?
I think it's cultural. I think it's cultural because earlier we were having a discussion as to how do we work well, and we seem to work well as individuals, but we have difficulty working as teams. And I think that's a big barrier. There was an article just last week in the Toronto Star, or one of the Toronto papers, where a lady was writing that if you want me to buy Black, treat me good. And the question is, there are a lot of other areas in our system where people are treated poorly, but they still do what they have to do there. So I think it's more cultural, Stephen. It's a will to do something different. It's a mindset that has been inculcated for generations. You take our sports, for example, and I talk about all sports. As individuals, Usain Bolt, for example, as an individual track star can do well. But as soon as he went into the relay with 3 other persons, there were challenges. So, I don't know, I think it's more cultural and historic, and we have to find a way to re-envision ourselves, change our mindset. And I see it's happening now. I see the younger folks are doing things a little different. But that is really what is holding us back, Stephen, I would say. It's not lack of individual talents in doing what we're doing. Because right now, as we meet in this forum, there are people with the skill sets that is required to run a good business. You have good accountants, good lawyers, good marketers. And as individuals, we are stars in our own right. The question is, how do we come together and make a difference? And I think it's cultural.
That's an interesting response. Okay. Now, if you're talking about coming together now, one of the effective ways, how do you effectively come together? So how do we effectively come together? Like, what do you see as the main barriers in order to do so?
And I'm going to take a technical approach to this answer.
Okay.
I find that in my own life, when I do stuff, I explain to someone why you're doing what you're doing, they tend to do a better job in doing it. And the technical answer is, if we know what is it we're about, if we get that technical understanding, that technical training, that formal core concept, I think we can do a better job. If you say to someone running a business, Stephen, for example, how do you manage your balance sheet? Now, if Stephen knows that his balance sheet is what tells him who he owes and who owe him and what is the net result, I think he's in a better position to see, you know what, my creditors are not paying me on time, or no, I'm not paying my creditors on time, or my debtors are not paying me, et cetera, or there's too much cash on the balance sheet. I should probably invest some in interest earning bonds and what have you. So, so the answer is one of the ways to come together, which is a technical answer, is how people need to educate themselves. And we who have got that skill set need to educate them so we speak a common business language. Business language.
Okay. I want to go into more of that, but we're going to go back to a few more of those a little later on, but I want to steer it back a little bit. Because right now, a lot of businesses, as they're going through COVID, they're looking differently at a business in terms of growing. But what do you see in COVID-19 affecting the business community? How do you see that affecting us?
Okay, and so that answers in two parts. Mm-hmm. First of all, business in general, whether COVID or otherwise, there are core principles that provide a blueprint for a successful business. And that will not change. You need to have a market, you need to provide in goods and services that people want or need. You need to provide it at a reasonable price. You need to have, the best talent delivering the services, etc. So that will not change. The second part is that COVID has now forced us to do things that we didn't envision that we wanted to do. Because there's an inertia in it, a natural inertia in humans. You stick to what you know and you tend to do it as long as you should until you're forced to change trajectory or what have you. So what COVID has demonstrated to us now is it's a new normal. It's a new normal, like the Zoom meeting we're having now. 6 months ago, somebody tell you it's not possible, and too lazy to do it and too old to learn the technology to digitize my business and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. But we are forced to do it now because it's a question of life and livelihood. We have to survive as healthy human beings, and we have to keep the economy going. So it's part of keeping life and going. So what you'll find now is a different form. It's an adaptation, it's a revisioning, it's a reinventing. That's what's happening now. And those who are prepared will come out stronger than those who are not as prepared.
Okay, and what do you see the challenges with businesses doing? What do you see the challenges with businesses actually doing that? You're saying they should reinvent. You're saying that they should restructure. Some business says they can't do that or they don't know how to. What's the challenge with maintaining that mentality?
And that's a bad mentality because you have a choice of staying in business or going out of business. So it's really not a choice. If you have to stay in business, you have to adapt. And that's one of the good features of being a human. We can adapt easily. We think it's difficult, but when we're forced to, we quickly find a way to do what we need to do. So for example, the hospitality, the transport, the airlines, the entertainment folks, they're the hardest hit right now. But look what airlines are doing. They're now saying buy tickets now and travel 2 years from now. They're still trying to generate cash flow. And I should say to you, cash is king right now. Cash has always been king because you go into business to make cash. You start with $1, you expect after a year or so, you make $1.10. But for those who can't find the cash or have access to credit to do what they do now, they have a real challenge. But you look at some of the restaurants, they've gone from just in-house sitting down, now they're talking about pickups. Mm-hmm. They're talking about sending the stuff out to people. So you have to adapt, and those who refuse to adapt, either through lethargy or otherwise, will fail. In the States right now, they're reporting an uptake on companies filing for bankruptcy. So that's one of the fallout. You're going to have bankruptcies, and you're going to have opportunities for companies to grow. Zoom that we're using now is a classic example. 6 months ago, they were probably rated 30 or so on the scale of companies that provide internet and screening services. I think they're number 2, or they're probably number 1 now. The last time I looked, they were number 2. So they've quickly gathered themselves to the opportunity. Schools, for example, are doing the same thing. You can't shut down the school, so let's go to virtual learning. It's the same thing in your business. You have to look at what you do, look at the business model that you have, and you may have to change to adapt to the new options that face you.
Okay, you know what? You're absolutely correct. And the reality is there's a lot of challenges that we can actually have and a lot that we can identify. Yes, we have to evolve, and yes, we have to, it's highly competitive, and those don't evolve and have dire changes. But in contrast to just talking about some of the challenges, I want to turn at this point and pivot, and let's talk about possible solutions. You know, what do you see business owners of small and medium-sized companies need to do specifically to help them pivot in this time? Or like business owners?
There are a few specifics that I can look at to help them pivot. First of all, there's always opportunity in whatever crisis we may or may not have. There's a saying that sales is vanity, profits is sanity, and cash flow is the reality. So when you're in a business, your sales this is all great things they like to do. And, you think about it in this big picture. But profits is what keep you grounded. If you're not making a turnover, you can't do all the things you want to do. Cash flow, especially at this time. So one of the specific is to keep your eye on how the cash is coming in and how the cash is going out. On the normal condition, you could do it once a year or once a quarter. Right now, you may have to do it daily. Another thing you should do is hold on to your talents. Hold on to the staff you have. See if you can keep your staff. And the stimulus packages that the government all over the world provided was specifically aimed to ensure that you don't have to lay off or terminate your staff during this time. Now, we don't know how long it's going to last, but the initial benefit was keep your talent available. The other thing is digitize.
Okay, before you go into those technicals, we're going to go into that. I definitely want to go into some of those technical ones. Now, because you're talking really about application of what to do.
Yes.
In order to be able to do that, I would think one of the things that they have to do is change mindsets in terms of how they see their business, how they see their business growing, and how they see their role in the business. What's your thoughts on that?
Definitely. As I see, I'm glad you bring me back on course, because one of the things I try to do, I'm a technocrat. And there are always human and social issues, because that's what all business is about. The most important asset you have in any business is the people, including the owners. So I use the term, for example, business model. You have to reinvent a business model, re-envision a business model. What it really means is how you make money. That is all business model means. How do you make money? And so if you're in the restaurant business right now, and patrons are not allowed to come into the restaurant and sit and have a meal in an hour and a half, 2 hours, you have to reinvent that business model. And so you're right, it's a mindset, but it's not a mindset in the sense of just a psychological or cultural mindset. It's a business mindset. And going back to the original stuff I said, if we teach our people the core concept of business, this becomes a natural fallout that when things are changing, we have to change. We have to change with the time. We have to look at what we do now, how we do it now, and see what is required to exist in the future. So yes, it's a mindset, but it's not necessarily a cultural mindset. It affects every business. But in our particular environment, we have to move from the hustle mindset, where you just, you buy some chicken and you jerk it and you sell, into a business mindset. What is this market calling for? I'm doing 60 pounds a week, but it's really, or we used to do it in the open here. It's not good to do it like that no more. So it's a mindset, but I would say it's more a business mindset, including other cultural and psychological and political and what have you. we have to change how we think about what we do.
I agreed on that one. Further, I would actually piggyback on that and saying a mindset, but also include things such as when you grow, oftentimes what I've seen is that businesses or business owners, they oftentimes focus all their efforts on working in their business versus on their business, or they don't surround themselves with teams. They, you know what, they are both the cook, bottle washer, delivery, host, in all aspects. What's your thoughts on that in terms of a mindset of a business owner? What should they be thinking on? Should they be thinking about how on the operations, the logistics, the delivery, the services, or should they be working to scale their business? What's your thoughts?
And again, it depends on the size and it depends on the mindset. This is where I'm going to piggyback on your concept of mindset. My father ran a tavern back home, and it could have grown, but he chose specifically to keep it as a little village bar. He didn't want it to go beyond what he thought he could control. So that is where the mindset, the organic nature of business growing. You probably start with one individual, it grows to, you bring some friends and you get some angel investment. And then if you're really thinking about scaling, you want to go all the way to being a corporate conglomerate. But it depends on the individual owner. What is their objective in the business? Some people just want to remain small. Some will, I'll go to a partnership, and others will say, I'll go to a conglomerate. So first of all, they have to decide what is their objective, what is their mission in running that business, and that will then determine where they want to go. The tools to get them there is what I mentioned earlier, core knowledge in running businesses.
Perfect. So you know what? I'm going to reach out to another couple of questions here that we actually got back. And I know I'm hitting the mindset hard here. What I found oftentimes is in the community, our idea of businesses, what I've seen, is oftentimes not businesses, it's jobs. People just pay themselves. It's a job. They just happen to pay themselves. And or there's a certain amount of contentment in just, if I pay the bills, I'm good. How do you think that's hurting us as a community? And if so, how does someone change thinking about that? And by the way, another question that someone came, what's wrong with jerk chicken? I love jerk chicken, but I love just selling jerk chicken.
I love jerk chicken. I probably came across wrong in terms of using it as an example. But what I'm saying, for example, is, and I'm going to give you a classic example about how we do what we do and whether it's hurting us or allowing us to go forward. A guy started with one truck. He owns one truck and is a truck driver. He's the mechanic, he's everything. He's working with somebody as a job. So he gets a contract to deliver aggregate with his one truck. And then over time, he's able to buy 40 trucks. He has not decided to expand the business. He may, if he get good consultation, probably have what is called a business name. But he's still filing all his tax returns to a T1 because he has not gone to the next level from one truck to 40 truck to a partnership or a corporation. His wife comes in on the back end each evening and she put the books and records together if she's not tired. And he's the same guy on the weekend who's working on the trucks as the mechanic. Now, in terms of the mindset, the question is that where he's comfortable, or is it that he doesn't know better? Because at that level, my answer would be he should now be out of that trench there and doing the planning and that sort of stuff and bringing people on board, surrounding himself with a team of folks that can answer the questions that he asks and to expand the business. So again, the question of mindset is it's one of a human decision, an individual decision.
I think we have a question coming in from Roderick.
Yeah.
Roderick, you have to unmute your mic. I don't hear. Yeah, go
Absolutely. Ahead. All right. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
That's on. Hey, good afternoon, Michael. How are you today? Good talk.
Still excellent. Still excellent.
All right. So I think one of the questions is, and I've come across it also, is how people can transition their mindset from small-minded to becoming that conglomerate that you're referencing, right? And from your experience, how does that take place? Like, how does that mindset, because, you know, I think just from, you know, our legacy of people being, in this case, from the Caribbean, you know, we weren't taught to think big, right? So from your experience, how do people transition their mindset from, again, small-minded to seeing the world as theirs and being able to get that conglomerate? Like your father, how would, what would that transition look like?
So first of all, can I say it's a mindset? It's a field for psychologists and psychiatrists, people in the social science. But when we try to apply it to business, so using my father for example, he's running a tavern, and
Yes.
just based on how it's growing, he knows it can become a big entertainment center. But he decides as an individual that he doesn't want it to go there because he's going to lose whatever individual contributing. He likes to dabble with the clients, he likes to dabble with the funds, he likes to make his personal drink and so on. Now, as I try to convey here, because I can't give the answer to how we can change a mindset, I can use the technical stuff to see, listen, you're doing your business now, and at the end of the day, you make 10% profit. He's probably happy with that. But you could have made 30% or 40%, and you can grow the business larger. And so how that transition take place is when someone says, think big, beautiful. That's the men I mentioned earlier, that's vanity. But what's a sanity is, what is the return on investment? What is the investment that you're willing to make in order to convert that thinking big into being big? And what is the reality on the ground? And as I mentioned in this earlier podcast, that we are from a commerce, a trading race. Doing business is not new to us. And so we just need to find where that disconnect is, why we decide now to work for people rather than to run our own business. Rather, things are more a job than wealth creation. And I mentioned earlier, being rich is just having money from day to day, lots of money. But being wealthy is to allow that money to work for you, even after your passing. It keeps working for you. Ford is no longer around, but the Ford company is still around and making tons of money on top of what Ford used to make back then. So that is a challenge, and I listen to
But
the
I
opinion.
think you answered the question, though. I think in terms of the education,
Yes.
showing that you can move from 10% to 30%, and showing them how to do it will change the mindset.
Well, Roderick,
So,
I'm actually going to be breaking down a few more questions actually going to that.
Okay.
I think it will help facilitate that, because it's a great question. It really was. I think it really builds value. And that's what we actually want to see is, you know, not just Kiyosaki type knowledge is up in the air, but hands-on, what can we do? So with that in mind, let's talk about that. You know, things such as, how does someone improve from a training and improvement perspective? If someone's a business owner, what do you think of training and investing in themselves and their team's skill set? What's your thoughts on that?
That is paramount.
Mm-hmm.
That is paramount, because you can get initial money, angel investment, you could win the lottery, you could inherit some money from family and so on. But at the end of the day, you need not necessarily the business titles. You don't need to have a MSc in accounting or what have you, but you need to know the core principles, how the system work, what are the rules of the system. There was an earlier question about getting a mortgage when I pay rent right now. The current rule of the system is not to assess rent payment as a valid measure of creditworthiness. That's one of the rules right now. So irrespective of how well you pay your rent and so on, it does not get counted in your credit score. Now, knowing that rule allow you to change your approach. So it's the same thing I'm saying here. You need to know the marketing, you need to know the accounting, or surround yourself like other successful entrepreneurs with people who have that skill set.
Well, that's actually really good. So let me ask you that, based upon that, because I agree with you. I think there's a lot of ways to surround and expand your portfolio of knowledge. You know, typically speaking, I love NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. It basically states that people have natural tendencies or natural strengths. How have you seen best diversification of those strengths? Is it consultancy services? Is there government, for example, there may be government programs that may be able to help that. There may be not-for-profits. There may be organizations, BBPA. How do you see someone actually putting teeth to that?
And that's a good point, Alton. And so this is my answer. There is knowledge and there's experience. I always say to folks when they tell me, oh, I've got 30 years, and I'm 40 years in the business. And I always jokingly say, it could be 1 year 40 times.
Yes.
Or it could be 40 years one time. So experience comes with time and what you're exposed to. Knowledge you can acquire by training and development. And one of the challenges we see between the two concepts is in its application. Somebody who works with a company and is promoted through the ranks without improving the knowledge base, the academic knowledge base, what you'll find is that they're very good at solving problems that is reoccurring because their experience allowed them to go back to what they did. Whenever there's a new problem that they've never encountered, that is where knowledge helps you. Like what's happening with COVID. We've never had a COVID. And so the people that they're drawing on now is not necessarily the people they experience because they have no experience with COVID. It's the training that people with knowledge that's bringing into the thing. Now, see, this is what this sort of stuff does, and this is what we have to do because it's new. And so my answer to that is to have both. As you go up the ladder, especially as owner manager, avail yourself to seminars and workshops and evening classes and link with BBPA and organizations like that that provide these things at no cost. The government website have a lot of stuff. I was just telling a friend of mine the other day, if you want to know how to do your payroll, the government of Canada, of course, is literally every week on teaching people how to do the payroll. So you can avail yourself of those that are, community-based and free. Or you can formally, right now we're running a program called Financial Literacy through Roderick's group, and it's fantastic. Align yourself with a program like that, and you can learn a lot of stuff there, and then you can enhance it by taking formal training. But we have to have both. And as you move up the ladder, I would recommend, that's not everyone's going to pass or MBA, and not everyone needs to have an MBA. But certainly when you talk about, you use technical language like cash flow and financial positions and, various ratios, KPI, for example. There's a popular word that's coming out now, key performance indicators. But guess what, Anton?
What's that?
A lot of folks see key performance indicators as an index of history. But that's not what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a driver. You should tell yourself as a business owner, this is what I want to do next year. I want to grow revenue by 10%. And then the key performance will see, how do you grow it? What is the sales you're going to increase it by? What is the prices you're going to use? So it's not after the fact you do a statistic and say, oh, I grew by 10%. It's actually before. You have your key performance indicators before, and then you plan how you're going to achieve it. And that comes with both, experience and knowledge. I think we need to put both as we go along.
No, that's actually great advice. Here's one thing is, You're correct. Some people say key performance, some say key predictive indicators. But either way, you really have to be able to analyze information. So what are some of the technology or operational pieces that it's very important for businesses to have so they can not only understand from a trend perspective, from a growth, from understanding KPIs of what to do, not only now, but going forward? What are some of the key technology improvements you think they got to do?
Well, right now, technology is here. 20 years ago, we had to do a lot of stuff manual. We had to rely on experts, all sort of stuff. There are search engines now that if you type in your own name, it will tell you things about yourself that you don't know. So we have to use technology, as mentioned earlier, digitize, convert the information you have so it can be used on computers. And without getting too technical, there's stuff called big data and analytical procedures and so on, where every bit of information, every bit of data that comes into your business, all your invoices with invoice numbers and who you buy it from, and the frequency you buy these things, and the quantity you buy these things, these are all fed into your accounting system routinely. But then you can take that information using technology and to tell you a story. Mm-hmm. You look at how they're tracking the COVID right now. They're using big data and technology to show almost on a minute by minute basis how the pandemic is either going up or going down. Mm-hmm. And this is just feeding in the basic information when somebody do a test, the name, the address, the this, the that, and then using technology to generate the story that you wanted to tell. So that is how, and small businesses can do it. The technology out there, Microsoft and especially Microsoft and Google, those are actually free technology too. A lot of this technology, you don't have to buy them. Mm-hmm. You know, they're free. But we may have to educate some of our owner managers and so on how to use them. That is where the knowledge comes in. How to avail ourselves of this technology and how to use them.
You know, I once again, I think that you're dead on. One of the challenges that I've seen growing throughout the community is when even having data or is how to effectively use it. We mentioned earlier on, I think the key is to really partner with ones that can help you even understand it. So for example, as you mentioned, your dad was a great example. He was a business owner. He saw an opportunity where he can grow by 10% and he thought it was phenomenal. Not recognizing that if he had key resources around him, they could have told him, listen, not grow by 10%, but you could have done a way you grow by 30, 40, 50%, and therefore actually see a difference.
I want to tell you something, Anton. Just want to tell you as you raise that. A lot of our small and mid-sized business persons in our community, during the year, they get a gut feel as to whether the business is making money or not, because they're very good at that. That is how they get into the game. Mm-hmm. It'll tell you, yeah, I'm not losing. But the first time they actually know is when they go to their accountant to file their T1. Mm-hmm. Is when they sit with the accountant and they're trying to do tax strategies and so on, that they realize, whoa, I made X amount, or I almost lose the business. A lot of these folks are not even taking routine salaries. You know, they're just working and taking some money and so on and so on. And that is a key indicator for decently run business. The owner must identify what his worth is and take it on a routine basis.
Okay. You know what? Is there any other pieces that you would say that an owner should do whether it's technology, whether it's training, whether it's process? Is there any other things you think they should be doing?
A major one I think they should be doing is to look at the legal structure under which they work.
Okay.
Is a sole practitioner with your family member all tied up the best way to do it? Or should you use the corporate structure that the government afford you and cover your liability and so on? And it forces you to pay your taxes on time and do a lot of stuff. And I'll tell you why I say that. The government has provided stimulus packages to help a lot of business. Mm-hmm. And one of the immediate challenge we had was a lot of these businesses didn't have the books and records up to date. It was difficult to demonstrate whether they have paid tax any at all. Some of the businesses keep showing losses for years after years after years. And so it was difficult for them to apply and make a case to access the funds. So the legal structure that you adopt on how you run the business, especially in this COVID time, allow you to access a lot of those funds. And bear in mind, these are forgivable funds in some cases and low interest rate in most cases.
You know what? We have a few minutes left, so I just want to transform real quickly because we've talked a lot of great information. But one thing that we have not really gone into is how do we support ourselves in our community? Well, because support is sometimes it's seen as we are, or how do we take advantage of some of the strengths in our community? Now, let me put a caveat out there. I've heard some people say, well, you know what? I don't want to, I've had experiences within the community that might not be so well. But there's also a lot of phenomenal experiences in our community, resources, tools, service providers. How do we grow or how do we tap into that access of large audiences? What are your thoughts on that? Large audience within our own community. For example, I think a lot of communities, we're not necessarily having the loyalty such as other communities do. We don't necessarily support such as other people's do. How do you see that being a challenge to our community?
You know what, Anton? I think people have done a PhD on that topic. There are many books written on it, and a lot of lecturers in big universities are constantly talking about it. The question is, how do we work as a team? How do we work as a team? As I say, I saw the article last week. I was very depressed. Treat me well. If you want me to buy black, treat me well. Now, what other services are provided in our community that people treat us well? Are we treated well in the school system? Are we treated well in the police, the justice system? There's no specific area that we're treated well. But yet, where we have this greatest of power, which is our economics, is where we spend our money. Because there's a lot of money in the black community. Doesn't stay there, comes in and get out in a very short time. So the question is, how do we work as a team? What are some of the things we need to do? We at the BBPA, for example, have been working at this for 38 years. We're in the community and we try to do this, we have training and so on and so forth. But how do we get to them? I don't have the answers I speak. I can just say that that is something that we need to do. And something like this, a seminar or a podcast like this, is a step in the right direction. Training is a step in the right direction. But there are other people, there are other community leaders who have done it before, who have got better answers than I'm providing. From a financial perspective, I'm just saying, we have got the wealth in the black community, but it does not stay in the black community. And that is our challenge.
With that,
how we get there, I'm going to defer to other more competent persons on that one.
You know what? You brought a point up earlier on. I think is very exciting. The reality is, many have experience and many have knowledge, and oftentimes, if we're trying to do something different, we can't necessarily look for historic trends. I would say, as a starting point, that we must make deliberate efforts to be screening and finding out and getting quality and getting references, but make deliberate efforts to source where possible people within our community to support that. I think that we need to we've seen as what's coming out of some of the protests going through, that when we band together and buy in bands, that there is definite economic power. I think we talk about little Jamaica right there. There's so many business communities that oftentimes we're looking and spending our money outside those communities for services. Again, I think the one thing that is one of my challenges, and I'm going on a little side to note here. I think that we don't make a deliberate effort to keep our money within our community. I know you said you want to defer for those that have more advice, but Well, I'll leave it alone. If
No,
we,
no, no, the answer is Anton. The specific answer is to spend our money in our community as far as possible.
yes,
That has been my approach. And I say Roderick is going to see something. You can bring him on board a little. But the reality, as I mentioned, there's the vanity and there's the sanity and there's the reality. People talk about customer service, for example, in our community. You know, yeah, set up a black business and you go there, the guy close the door when he see you coming because 5 minutes before close time. Doesn't open it until half an hour before the time it should have opened. You can't question whatever he does. But guess what? We have to find a way to overcome that barrier.
yes,
Because where we send our money, we're not getting better treatment.
yes.
But we accept whatever the treatment is over there and we spend our money. So when I say I defer it, is I wanted my specific advice here to be, how do we take that $1 trillion that is in the community? Give you one example and then I'll defer to Roderick. There is a co-op there's a co-op. In the co-op, 100% of the folks in the co-op are black. So the revenue base of that co-op, the rent that they pay, all coming from the black community. But none of the persons who work to take that funds out, the property management, the accountant, the auditors, the engineers that work there, the maintenance people, they're not from the community and they're not of the community. So here's a source where all the funds are coming in, but it's all going out. The question is, can't we look around to see if we can get black property managers, black accountants, black auditors, and so on? That is the answer. And how do we transition that mindset to get the board to say, when you go for tender, don't just tender in the traditional area. But I leave one last thing though, is that there's a overarching rule, regulation that has been there for like 50 years. And what it does, it structures the sourcing of property management, accountants, auditors through a very narrow channel where only a handful of people work and they're not of the black community. So even to say, yeah, you go multi-source, it's the same persons you're looking at. You just decide which one you want to take. And that is a rule that we have to first change that rule before we can then go out. Because the rule is there for about 50 years.
You're hitting a hot point here, and I think it's really important. Bearing that in mind, we only have about 5 minutes left. I have a few more questions I have to ask you. Is how, until we're able to change the rules, how do individuals such as Ross has a recruiting company, such as yourself, you have an accounting company. There's other individuals. How do they get part of that network where they're seen or they're evaluated similar to their counterparts that are of equal disposition? Whether it's Nadine's advertising company, advertising agency, how do we do that? How do we begin to build?
Like what we're doing now with Black Lives Matters, through advocacy, through coming together, through making our voice heard and deciding that enough is enough.
Agreed.
That is how we do it.
Agreed.
That is how we do it.
Well, listen, we're running out of time, man. First of all, before I do so, before I wrap up, what is the one last thing you would like the people to know, if you would like to say one last thing? And how, if somebody wants to get specific information from you, for example, Claire wanted to know a specific question in terms of how much you should be paying an accountant. How do people get in contact with you after the show?
Okay. So first of all, you can get in contact with me through the BBPA.
Okay.
All right. Or my personal email is michael.pinnock@bell.net.
Thank you. Great.
Those are two. But my phone number is 416-436-2139.
Please, everybody, he's a married man. No special ideas. No special ideas out there.
Okay. Now, in terms of what I would love to see is how do we get our people to remember that we're great? We don't want to go to the table.
That's right.
To appease other people. We're not asking for a seat at the table as if we need to act. We are already at the table. We have been pushed off the table and we need to get back there. The mindset, how do we get in the minds of folks? And I'm going to go back to this article. If you want me to buy black, treat me right. My God, that's worse than the drunk crow concept. Already you have defeated yourself. There's so many other bad things happening to us all over the place. And all you can talk about is customer service in a place. 100%. Go there, talk to the guy and let him know you can't treat people like this. Because I said to folks, and I know one of the trends that's happening now is let's kick the police out, let's do this, let's do that. A bad police is a bad police. And you don't want to swap out a white bad police for a black bad police. You have to change the concept of policing. Now I can have a whole lecture on that one, you know, because the history of the police don't allow them to do what we want them to do. They weren't designed to do what we want them to do. So it's very difficult to get them to change. But that is what I would leave. How do we, as a people, remember that we're at the table and we're not fighting for somebody's table? You know, this is where we ought to be. We're all human beings and we're at this one human being table. And that will transcend itself into improve your knowledge base, improve your skill sets, work with the resources that are available, and just bring ourselves up to where we ought to be. Because we were there before.
Agreed. Michael, I really appreciate you. As Ross gets ready to come on right now, I really thank you for your feedback. You gave a wealth of knowledge. I 100% agree that we as a community, oftentimes we do not tap into the resources we have, but we have so much potential. Yes, we have challenges and we have issues, but so does every other community as well. I don't think there's anything negative in ours. I think we have huge opportunity. But with that, Spank, we're just about under time. I'm going to turn over to Ross for a few seconds.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael, for joining us today. And of course, Anton, for continuing to host these sessions. I think they're very important for us as a community to share information and grow together. With that said, next Wednesday, we'll be taking a break because of Canada Day. So I'd like to say, enjoy your Canada Day. But we'll be back again the following Wednesday, July 8th, with a personal trainer, professional personal trainer, Kim Niles. She's been on City TV, CB24, and she's going to give us some tips on fitness, facts and fads on fitness. So stay tuned for a real exciting Ask the Professional session next Wednesday, July 8th. Thank you everybody for joining and have a pleasant day.
Excellent session. Thank you. Michael, great job.
Thanks, my beautiful president. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Ben, Stephen, Claire, Donna, Nadine, Roderick, Gavin, Ross.
Anton, thank you as well. Great job. Ross, great job. Gavin, kudos. Great job.
Take care, everybody.
Take care. Yeah, bye-bye. Take care.
Thanks, guys.